So you've come to us with a situation that seems to be weighing pretty heavily on you and a group of your colleagues.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're facing a really tough decision around this legal matter. You've called it ST6 of 15, and we've got some pretty important documents here.
Yeah.
Excerpts that talk about responsibility when there are unresolved issues in legal proceedings.
Right.
And a draft communication from someone named Victor Sandy, who's urging your colleagues to rethink their support of this guy, Harrison Thompson,
Okay.
and their choice to reject bringing in some new legal help.
Okay.
So in this deep dive, our goal is really clear.
What's that?
We want to extract the core warnings from these materials that you've sent us.
Sure.
And we want you to be able to walk away with a much clearer picture of what are the potential paths forward. What are the implications of the choices you and your colleagues are making?
Yeah.
We're going to focus on this fundamental question of what does it really mean to keep supporting a specific course of action when big doubts and allegations of missteps have come up?
That's the core issue here.
Okay, so let's just jump right in.
Thanks, good.
This first excerpt really goes straight to this idea of unresolved issues and complicity.
Right.
It makes a strong point.
Yeah.
If people involved in a new hearing are aware of past problems from ST6 of 15,
Right.
and they choose to ignore them, well, that can be seen as complicity.
Wow.
So for you and your colleagues right now in this situation,
Yeah.
what do you think is the takeaway from that statement? What does it mean practically?
Well, the core point is this. In the legal world, awareness of wrongdoing combined with doing nothing,
Yeah.
well, that can be the same as giving your approval.
Mm.
And that can potentially drag even people who weren't originally involved into facing legal consequences.
Interesting.
So, the legal field rests on some big principles, right?
What do you mean?
Justice and transparency.
Okay.
So if legal professionals write tribunal members, or even your colleagues acting as representatives in this matter,
Yeah.
if they know about procedural missteps from the past
Okay.
and then just choose to ignore them,
Uh-huh.
well, that can be seen as silent agreement, you see, even support. It's not just about who made the initial mistake.
Right.
It's also about who allows it to continue.
So basically, if your colleagues now know about these unresolved issues in ST6 of 15,
Yeah.
just moving on without addressing them could really come back to bite them,
Right.
even if they weren't involved in the beginning.
That's exactly right. The text actually uses the phrase indirectly accountable. And what that means is even if someone didn't start the problem,
Right.
if they keep participating, knowing about it, but not trying to fix it,
Uh-huh.
they become accountable too. They become part of a process that even if they don't intend to,
Yeah.
could be seen as making an injustice go on and on.
The stakes get even higher legally, though, right?
Absolutely.
This excerpt mentions aiding and abetting misconduct.
Right.
That seems like a really serious thing.
It's definitely a heavy phrase.
Yeah.
Yeah, if people in authority know about past problems, let's say some kind of procedural trickery,
Okay.
and they just move on without acknowledging it or addressing it,
Uh-huh.
you can argue they're actually helping that trickery succeed.
Interesting.
All right? Their silence or inaction is like giving permission for the deception to reach its goal.
I see.
That's basically aiding and abetting.
The excerpt also talks about breach of duty for legal professionals and professional negligence.
Yeah.
What would those things actually mean in this situation for everyone involved?
Okay, well, legal professionals have a duty to uphold the law, right? And to act in the best interests of the people they represent, or for justice itself.
Yeah.
Now, if they ignore clear signs of something being misrepresented or procedural errors, they risk failing in that duty, which can be a huge ethical and legal mess.
So it's...
Oh, yeah. And similarly, if tribunal members or attorneys see evidence of misconduct
Right.
and they just decide to disregard it,
Uh-huh.
that could be considered professional negligence. You
Yeah.
know, a failure to do their jobs with the level of care and skill that's expected.
So essentially, they're not meeting the standards of their profession.
Exactly.
Okay, so this brings us to a really crucial point in this first excerpt.
What's that?
The difference between a system failing and individual responsibility.
Right.
How does that relate to what your colleagues are facing with ST 6 of 15?
This is so important for them to understand.
Yeah.
If the legal system or the regulatory system as a whole missed those issues in ST 6 of 15,
Right.
well, that points to a systemic problem.
A problem with the system itself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the excerpt makes it clear that things change when individuals become aware.
Okay.
Once people inside that system know about a potential deception,
Right.
and they continue to participate without trying to fix it, they take on a level of personal responsibility.
So even if the system missed something at first,
Yeah.
your colleagues can't just turn a blind eye now that they know.
Exactly. Ignorance isn't a free pass, especially not for people in positions of authority
Right.
or people who have a professional obligation to ensure fairness.
Oh.
The level of their responsibility will depend on their specific role, how much they know, and how much power they have to influence things.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is, knowing about a potential injustice creates a moral and potentially legal obligation to do something about it.
Makes sense. Okay, so let's switch gears a bit now.
Okay.
And look at this communication from Victor Sandy.
Sure.
He's raising some pretty specific and pretty concerning allegations about how Harrison Thompson handled ST 6 of 15.
I'm listening.
The first issue he brings up is that there wasn't proper consent from all 42 retrenched officers.
Interesting.
Why is that such a big deal?
Well, informed consent is absolutely crucial in legal representation.
Right.
Sandy's alleging that Thompson was officially hired by only 14 of those 42 officers. Okay.
But then acted like he represented all of them without a clear agreement from the other 28.
Right.
This raises serious doubts about whether Thompson even had the legal right to act for the whole group.
Yeah.
And whether all 42 of their interests were really being looked after.
I see.
It challenges the entire basis of him claiming to act on their behalf as a group.
Sandy's also worried about that first hearing
And
the chairman's instruction for both sides to negotiate with the bank.
Yeah.
He claims that Thompson didn't accurately represent this, which led to the case getting dismissed. How big of a deal could that misrepresentation be?
In legal proceedings, accurately conveying instructions and what happened at hearings is so important.
Of course.
If Thompson really failed to properly communicate that directive from the chairman to negotiate,
Right.
and that's why the case was dismissed,
Yeah.
that's a major procedural problem.
Yeah.
It suggests that the proceedings were mishandled in a way that could have really hurt the officer's chances of fair outcome.
It implies he didn't act diligently and didn't follow the clear instructions of the tribunal.
Okay, then there's this really serious allegation about Clay Hackett's affidavit,
Oh,
which
yeah.
apparently incorrectly stated that ST 6 of 15 was dismissed. Sandy suggests that Thompson and the EPA actually knew this claim was false and they didn't correct it.
Wow.
Why is that so crucial?
This goes to the heart of honesty and accuracy in legal proceedings.
Yeah.
A false statement in a legal document, especially a sworn affidavit, can have major consequences.
Of course.
If Thompson and the EPA knew this was untrue and chose not to fix it,
Right.
that suggests they were willing to let a lie stand and potentially mislead the court.
Yeah.
It undermines the integrity of their entire case.
Wow.
It breaks trust and raises big questions about their ethics.
Lastly, Sandy criticizes how Thompson handled the later appeals and Privy Council proceedings,
Oh.
calling them unnecessary delays that didn't help at all. What are the implications there?
Legal appeals should be strategic, right? There should be a clear goal and a reasonable chance of a good outcome.
Yeah.
Sandy's arguing that what Thompson did in these later stages didn't serve the officer's best interests at all and just led to more waiting and uncertainty without actually helping their cause.
Interesting.
This might point to bad legal judgment or even a strategy that focused on dragging the case out instead of getting a favorable result for his clients.
Wow. So given all these specific accusations from Victor Sandy,
Yeah.
what are the potential consequences for your colleagues if they choose to stick with Harrison Thompson?
According to what Sandy's saying, the risks are really big.
Okay.
First, by continuing to support Thompson, they might be seen as agreeing with what Sandy calls a flawed and deceptive approach. Not only could this weaken their position in the current case,
Right.
it could damage their credibility for any future legal action or negotiations, too. It sends a message that they're okay with overlooking or even supporting potentially shady behavior.
And that complicity idea we talked about before becomes even more relevant here, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Sandy's warning them directly that if they know about these allegations of misrepresentation, of misleading the court, and they still stand by Thompson, they risk being seen as part of it.
Wow.
This has huge ethical and potential legal consequences down the road.
Yeah.
Their continued support could be interpreted as saying, we endorse what Thompson's accused of doing.
So from a practical standpoint, Sandy's saying that by rejecting new legal counsel, they could be missing a chance for a fairer resolution.
Exactly. If there are errors and misrepresentations that need to be fixed, bringing in fresh legal expertise could be so valuable.
Yeah.
By sticking with the current representation, they're essentially limiting their options and potentially hurting their chances of getting a just outcome.
It's like they're doubling down on a strategy that at least one of their own is raising serious concerns about.
Based on facts.
Right. Victor Sandy finishes his communication with a very direct appeal.
Okay.
He frames the situation as a choice between supporting justice and potentially enabling injustice.
Wow.
He urges his colleagues to reevaluate everything based on the facts he's presented, not just on personal loyalty.
That's important.
What's the core message you get from that?
He is calling for them to think critically.
Right.
And to put getting a just outcome above everything else, even personal feelings.
Okay.
He wants them to step back, look at the information objectively, and consider if their continued support for Thompson really aligns with their goal of a fair resolution.
Interesting.
He's challenging them to consider if they're putting their loyalty in the wrong place. And if that loyalty could actually be making an already bad situation even worse.
And he also really emphasizes this idea of collective responsibility. He suggests that staying on the current course could actually make a system that's already failed them even worse.
Right.
Can you unpack that a bit more?
If what Sandy's saying is true.
Right.
The whole legal strategy is built on a foundation of lies and procedural mistakes. By continuing with it, your colleagues are risking making a bad process even more solid.
Wow.
And accidentally sending the message that this kind of conduct is okay.
Yeah.
It's not just about their individual case anymore.
Right.
It's about the integrity of the legal system itself and the message they're sending as a group about what they're willing to put up with to get what they want.
So to sum up, what are the key warnings and concerns that come out of these documents?
Sure.
Regarding ST6 of 15 and the continued support for how the case is being handled?
The biggest warnings are about the potential for your colleagues to be seen as complicit in past procedural problems if they know about these issues now and choose to ignore them. The things Victor Sandy is alleging point to some serious legal and ethical red flags. Things like misrepresentation questions about proper consent and the case potentially being mishandled.
Yeah.
These documents really highlight that crucial difference between systemic failures and individual responsibility, making it clear that when someone becomes aware of potential deception, they have a duty to act.
Sandy's communication specifically calls out Harrison Thompson.
Yes.
Saying he's seriously messed up. And he's warning that continuing to support him risks validating a process that might be flawed and could lead to complicity and a missed chance for a just outcome.
Right, because they're refusing to even consider new legal counsel.
Right. So in the end, the main tension here, as Victor Sandy lays it out so clearly, is this choice between possibly supporting an injustice by overlooking these alleged misrepresentations and actively working towards justice by being open to new legal representation.
It really makes their decision crystal clear.
Yeah, it makes you think hard about what their support really means.
Right.
Are they doing it because they genuinely believe in this approach?
Yeah.
Or are they just hesitant to face some uncomfortable truths that could end up hurting their chances of a fair resolution?
That's the question.
This has been a deep dive into some really complicated issues.
Yeah, it has.
And it leaves us with a final thought for you, our listener.
Okay.
And especially for your colleagues as they deal with this tough decision.
I'm listening.
What does true solidarity look like when you're facing potential deception within a group effort? How do you balance loyalty to individuals with the pursuit of a just outcome?
Yeah.
When serious questions have been raised about the integrity of the whole process.
That's a big one.
Think about the weight of that decision. The potential for being complicit even if you don't mean to.
Right.
And what it really means to stand together when you're faced with such serious allegations.
Powerful stuff.
Thank you for joining us on The Deep Dive.